here for our weekly Chairman's Update. I'm speaking to you today from the Capitol in Olympia. We are in the heaviest part, the busiest part of the legislative session here at the Capitol, and I was working here today on a Saturday on some amendments and some other legislative work ahead of next week when there's another busy week full of committee hearings and floor votes on bills and budgets. So very busy here in Olympia. I'll get back to that in a minute. But I want to start this update by talking about something that's been in the news a lot at a more federal level. The U.S. Supreme Court yesterday, on Friday the 20th, made a ruling that affects some of the Trump administration's use of tariffs as a tool in trade negotiations. As you know, President Trump has been very aggressive in using tariffs, much more aggressive than his predecessor, Mr. Biden, much more aggressive than any of the past presidents in recent history. And that's controversial in and of itself. There are a lot of free market Republicans who aren't keen on the use of tariffs, but I've always thought that tariffs are a tool. In trade negotiations, they're like a good card in a game of poker, a hand of poker, where you can use it in different ways. And sometimes the way you use a tariff is like a poker game, where maybe it's even a kind of a bluff or a signal. And Trump has been pretty effective at renegotiating some of our bilateral, one-on-one country trade arrangements with countries by merely threatening to use tariffs in the trade relationships with individual countries. Now, the issue in the Supreme Court ruling had to do with broader tariffs that the president was using. And essentially, what the Supreme Court said to the administration and the president was, you've used them too aggressively and too broadly. If you're going to use tariffs, you either need to tailor them more narrowly to a specific individual country trading partner or a specific industry, or somehow make the tariff more focused, tightly focused on a point in the law. And they also recommended that the president work more closely with Congress on using tariffs. Now, the president does have pretty broad discretion to use tariffs in trade negotiations, and the Supreme Court acknowledged that. So you're going to hear some politicians, Patty Murray, Bob Ferguson, saying, oh, this was a big rebuke of Trump. Not really true. It was a check. I mean, the High Court definitely said, Mr. President, you went too far with this certain group of tariffs you've used. But they didn't tell him he can't use tariffs as a tool in trade negotiations. And President Trump, in his way, hours after the Supreme Court ruling, announced a new tariff he was going to pursue that does comply with some of the limitations and the restrictions that the Supreme Court mentioned in its ruling. You're going to hear more about this tariff issue in the next few days as it kind of filters through the media and the administration and President Trump figure out exactly how to respond to it and how to use what the U.S. Supreme Court has said. Here locally in Washington, Costco, the big discount retailer, has said they feel they paid too much in tariffs before this ruling and they want some of that money back. There's not really a clear path for how an individual firm could get a refund of tariffs that it or others had to pay during the last year or so. But we'll see. I mean, Costco is a big and powerful company. They may hire some lawyers and try to demand some kind of credit or rebate from the federal government. But I think in all, you will see the president continuing to use tariffs or the threat of tariffs as a tool in his trade negotiations with other countries. And as I said, he's been particularly multiple countries or many countries or all countries. That's where he gets sideways with the courts. So what the president does, I expect he will do what the court says, I believe, but he will find clever ways to use the powers that he does have to use tariffs in trade negotiations. And it's one of the things he likes to do as president, and he's pretty good at it. So I don't think you're going to see this court ruling affect any of that. Now back to our state, back to Washington State, this Washington, and here in Olympia. The last couple of weeks have included we're at about the halfway point, a little more than the halfway point of the current legislative session, and the last few weeks have included the policy cutoff, which is one of the points during the legislative session when bills have to get their votes off the floor of the legislature in order to keep proceeding toward the governor's desk to be signed into law. And these cutoff periods are where lots of bills die, where they go to bill heaven. They will not get to the governor's office this year, and the sponsors are going to have to wait till next session to try to get the bill through again. Some big successes we had defensively in killing bad bills. Well, first of all, we killed the bill that would have made initiatives harder to do. You may have heard about that one. It would have made an initiative sponsor get 1,000 signatures before the initiative could even be filed. And it would have changed some of how signature gathering can work. That bill died. It is not going to be law, and so initiatives are not going to be messed with. That was a good win for our side. There was also a terrible bill, the so-called Homeless Bill of Rights, which would have made sweeping a homeless camp almost impossible to do, and any kind of enforcement of the law around homelessness. These homeless camps that clean them up or arrest dealers failed. So the homeless bill, and there were a couple other bills that we were able to knock down. Other bills that we were able to knock down that are good. But a few bills that did pass, some include the bill to restrict sheriffs and allow state bureaucrats to decertify sheriffs and kind of set up a situation where sheriffs would not be elected anymore by the people of their counties in Washington. They would be appointed. We don't like that one. That one is still alive. We don't like a bill that's still alive that raids state employee and particularly law enforcement and firefighter pensions. This one bill that's still alive would raid what's called LEF 1. That's a law enforcement and firefighters retirement pension fund that has money in it. And the left Democrats here in Olympia want to steal about $4 billion out of that cops and firefighters pension fund. And we Republicans are completely against it, which we just don't think stealing money out of pension funds is a good idea. Washington has always avoided doing that, and we've seen states like California and Illinois and New York steal money out of pension funds, and it's a sure sign that a state's in financial trouble, big, long-lasting financial trouble. And I'm proud that Washington hasn't done that in the past. And it's an interesting issue because it puts Republican legislators kind of on the side of working people and even some union groups. We think pension funds should not be messed with. And the liberal Democrats are the ones trying to steal money out of state pensions. That's one that's still alive, and we're going to try to fight it every inch of the way that we can. And of course, the big one that's still alive is the governor's state income tax proposal. Of course, our state has always avoided having a state income tax, but that one is a newfangled idea by Mr. Bob Ferguson, who wants to create a new state income tax. We are encouraging everyone to go online, go on the internet, go to the legislative website and sign in online to where you can comment on some of these comments, sign in, oppose, yes, no on these three bills. The bill that would from the cost firefighter pension, the bill that would create this state income tax that we really don't like, and the bill, it's just strange to me that these bills are going ahead because they're just so bad and so bad for the people of Washington that we want to make sure we can knock them down as best we can. So we'll include links you can click on and go and testify no to these remaining bad bills. That's it for this week. There's a lot going on in DC with the tariff decision, and we'll see what the president does there in response. And here at the Capitol, we're in the thick of the legislative session. So there's going to be all kinds of talk in the coming couple of weeks about what the governor and his minions in the legislature are up to. But rest assured, we are standing strong. We're playing very good defense. We are knocking down as many of their bad bills and bad taxes and bad policy points as we can. And we're going to make sure that as the year goes on and we get closer to the midterm elections in November, that Republicans are messaging strong and are front and center on fixing what the left and the Democrats have broken here in Olympia and back in DC. So we're in the thick of it, much more to come, but until next week, be well and stay strong.